Keir Starmer's government could fall at any moment, which has got me wondering, what's it going to be remembered for? And to me, there's a pretty clear answer, and that's how little it did for Britain's young. Hello, and welcome to Reality Check. Less spin, more stats. I'm Michael Simmons, the Spectator's economics editor. You're going to have to forgive me a bit for this episode, because this is something I feel quite angry about. I feel like this government just relentlessly shafts young people. But what do I mean by that? Well, let's start with student loans. That's a scandal that Westminster is finally waking up to. You know, inflation has hit everyone in Britain over the last few years as price rises have soared. But I think graduates have suffered more than most, and that's because of the way student loans work. The interest on the loans is linked to inflation, so as inflation increases, as it has done, so too do what you pay back on the loans. The result of that is that many of our graduates are paying thousands of pounds to these loans, and the amount they owe back is still going up because they're not keeping up with the interest. And you might say, you know, tough, that's how these loans work, that's how they were always explained. But Rachel Reeves did something to make things worse at the budget. She decided to freeze the threshold at which you start to pay back those loans, meaning that everyone has to pay more because inflation has brought their salaries up, but it's not brought up the point where you start paying them back. The result of all that is the average graduate from 2022, for example, will have to spend over £3,100 more over their career paying back the loans than they otherwise would have. And bizarrely, for a Labour government, it's actually poorer graduates on lower incomes that will end up being even harder hit because they pay the loans back more slowly. They end up paying more overall. Student loans are just the tip of the iceberg, though. There are plenty of areas where this government seems determined to screw over the young. In fact, they seem to want there to be two kinds of citizens. The working young who are constantly hit by inflation, whose incomes are chipped away by rising prices. And then wealthy pensioners who are totally insulated from it. Take the state pension. The government has obviously continued to commit to the triple lock, meaning that pensioners' incomes will always outpace or at least keep up with inflation. But again at the budget, Reeves went further than that. She gave a guarantee that any pensioner whose sole income comes from the state pension will never have to pay tax on it at all. And then look at what she did with salary sacrifice. By bringing in a £2,000 limit to what you can sort of hide from the taxman as you pay into your pension, it means that people just starting out in their career now will benefit far less from the compounding effect that our current pensioners have reaped the rewards of for decades. And then to really rub salt in the wounds, look at savings. She reduced the cash ISA limit for everyone in the economy from £20,000 to £12,000, except for one group, she made a special exemption, and I'll let you guess, well, it's the over 65s. They get to keep the old £20,000 limit. No real reason given why, but hey-ho. But it's not just the government's tax and spend decisions that seem to go against the young and in favour of the old. It's the wider economy too. Take the issues in the housing market we discussed last week. Affordability is just getting worse and worse, so many young people just have no chance of getting onto the housing ladder at all. But to have even the smallest chance of buying a flat, you've obviously got to get a job first. And that's something that, amazingly, this Labour government has made even worse too. Since November 2024, something like 219,000 payroll jobs have disappeared. And that's thanks to increases in the minimum wage and the £25 billion tax raid on employers' national insurance contribution. The result of both those measures has just been that it's become more and more expensive to create new jobs, to take people on. And it really is the young people that are suffering from that more than most. But some of the figures on this are really quite shocking. There's now 110,000 graduates under the age of 30 who are having to rely on benefits. And since Labour won the election in 2024, over 90,000 under 24-year-old payroll jobs have disappeared too. What's the result? We now have nearly 1 million British young people that are classed as NEET, not in education, training or employment, not doing anything with their lives. That's not just an economic tragedy, it's a human one too. And again, something that Labour just seem to be doing nothing about. But if you manage to beat the odds and you manage to get a good degree that goes on to give you a high salary, our punitive tax system and its bizarre marginal rates will come to get you as well. Take someone with children that manages to achieve an £100,000 salary. They find themselves staring over the edge of a cliff. If they were to take on extra work or get a promotion or a pay rise that puts them just £1 above that rate, they risk losing £20,000 in earnings. That's not good for them, but it's not good for Britain's economy either. We see people refusing to take promotions, refusing to take extra work. And the result is they stop progressing in their careers, but the economy stops growing too. Reform seem to have joined in with this hating on the young too. This week, Nigel Farage gave a speech in front of a crowd which, I'm sorry to say, seemed to mostly contain boomers, about how much he doesn't like working from home. He was saying it was unproductive and it needed to come to an end. Now, for what it's worth, I've got some sympathy with his view that working from home is not great for the economy. But I don't think political parties or the government should be getting too involved in people's working conditions. Farage dictating whether people can work from home or not is surely just as bad as the government's workers' rights bill. And think how cruel it is. Britain's young people are spending thousands of pounds to rent flats that they have almost no chance of ever owning. They're paying thousands of pounds of additional tax, and they're now paying thousands of pounds more on their student loans. And Farage wants to make it even worse for them by making them spend thousands of pounds on unnecessary commuting costs as well. But I think this problem goes deeper than politics. It's about how our whole society treats young people, and I don't think it treats them very well. It's not a new thought. I first started to think about this in COVID, when young people, had to sacrifice their freedoms to defend against a disease that they were at a very low risk of. And what was society's reward for them? Well, one of the starkest examples of this is a poll in 2021 that asked about the COVID measures and if any of them should be made permanent even after the disease had gone away. And a staggering 26% of British people said that nightclubs should never even be opened again. So it's not just about harming our young people fiscally in terms of their tax, in terms of what benefits they can receive. Some people don't even want them to have fun either. So is this ever going to change? Well, in a way, it's partly us young people's fault because we never vote. But there's a note of hope there. Another poll I was looking at today said that 84% of voters would vote for a party that sorts out the student loan mess, that makes our tax system work so that it doesn't disincentivize you from progressing in your career. But will any politician be prepared to stick it to the boomers and think about the young? Thanks for letting me have a little rant there. I hope you've enjoyed it, or at least found it interesting. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to tap the bell and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a follow as well. And don't forget, we also have a newsletter that rounds up the show and the other economic goings-on of the week. And for more information on all of that, just go to spectator.com/reality check.